Now let's press on to the part of the discussion for us car guys and gals that's, shall we say, perhaps we don't have it all right up here because we're willing to put up with a bit of risk, even in a $5,000 car, because we want to drive something cooler. And there is hope for us. So before I got on camera here, once again, I did some more research both here in Oregon as well as down in LA, and I found some great examples. The first example I found was a 2006 Pontiac Solstice. Now this checks all the boxes of what I talked about before. In other words, this guy who's selling it is the original owner. The car, I think, is in Santa Monica, so it's in a good neighborhood. He had all the records. He had pictures of the records on the Craigslist posting. And the car, he said, no accidents, whatever. And he had it up for $4,300. Granted, 130,000 miles, but I would not be afraid of 130,000 miles of A, a General Motors car, or B, the one with a 4-cylinder engine. Of course, got to get it checked out by a mechanic, but the reality is I think I could go to that guy, probably get him into the high threes, and the thing about that car, all its depreciation is done. As long as you maintain the car, you change the oil regularly, basically keep it a decent looking vehicle, you're never going to lose money on it. If anything, in the case of like a Solstice, I think that would go up in value. Then that I could understand would be great for people who live in California like me. Not all of you live in California. So how about something for more practical people, but still something a bit cool? In that case, I'm going to go with another car I know very well, and that's Volvos. So there are many choices. I typed in $5,000 as the max limit, and both here as well as down in LA came up with so many choices, everything ranging from 900 series Volvos, 850 series Volvos, all the way down to the 240s. The 240s are tanks. Like, you could take like a Russian machine gun to the 240 engine and that thing, it won't die. That's how amazing those cars are. But the problem with them, they don't depreciate anymore. If anything, if you find like a nice 240 GL with a crank sunroof, that may be more than $5,000 because people know the value of those cars, especially when the miles aren't ridiculous. 850s, also great choices. Now here's the asterisk with Volvos. The parts are not exactly cheap, and it's not like the Pontiac where you really could wrench on it yourself. I would highly suggest if a Volvo is an option as a $5,000 car, you would need to have a guy, a local independent mechanic, not a Volvo dealer, and then you can very efficiently maintain a Volvo. It's not going to be as reliable perhaps as a Toyota, but it definitely would be reliable and absolutely a lot cooler. Okay, now let's press on to the most fun part of this discussion, and that is the $5,000 sorta modern classic that you can drive every day. Now there's some disclaimers here. Number one, this depends on the region of the world or the country that you hail from. Weather is an issue here in some of these cases. Number two, I would highly suggest you know how to wrench to have a car like this because it would help to be able to tweak things. Not things that are unreliable, just things that are going to be annoying. And number three, and this is actually good news, all of their depreciation is done. So if you actually take care of it, perhaps improve it over your tenure with the vehicle, you might be able to make some money. So let's start with the obvious choice, which you knew was coming, and that is the Pontiac Fiero. But once again, a disclaimer, you're not getting an 88 T-top 5-speed V6 in red for $5,000. Those are already full-on acceptable classic cars that are now selling at places like Barrett-Jackson, so vaya con Dios on that one. But you can indeed, and I found a couple of nice sunroof 2.8 V6 cars that were just plenty cool that were $5,000. The next choice, and this one we actually have a real use case here at the show. You guys have heard me refer to Mike, the cameraman. He's been with me since 2012, and in all those years, even before I met him, he had a Z31. Great choice, Nissan ZX, great choice. His is an 85, I think. He has 240,000 miles on it. He knows how to wrench. He doesn't do much wrenching on it. And this car has never given him a stitch of trouble. Granted, it's not the prettiest one out there, but again, I looked online. I found a couple T-top cars, stick, totally reliable choices that would be great for $5,000. Then Once again, an obvious choice if you saw our Dave Ramsey, How Do You Buy a $150,000 Car episode, one of my choices, an RX-7. Specifically a second gen, you could probably get a first gen at this point, but they too are starting to appreciate. You're not going to get an anniversary edition, all white RX-7 turbo, still in the wrapper for $5,000, but you can buy like an RX-7 Sport for $5,000. Plenty of them on offer. Great, great choice of a vehicle, and I got to tell you, it is so much fun to drive a rotary-powered sports car that is that light. Then I'm going to give you a dark choice. This one, I fully expect you to berate me horribly in the comments, but I'm going with it anyway. A Buick Reatta. Yes, I said a Buick Reatta, but before you crucify me, let me give you a couple of reasons to defend my choice here. Number one, it's a cool-looking car, people. It was a beautiful design. Sadly, it's front-wheel drive. That's why it looks weird, because the wheels, you remember the dash-to-axle ratio we talk about in Volvo episodes? The wheels are in the wrong place. That's why it looks stupid. But other than that, I love the look of that car. Number two, bulletproof reliability. It has been blessed with a 3800 V6 from GM. Again, you could take a Russian machine gun to that thing, and nothing would happen to it. Super reliable. Couple of asterisks on this one. Once again, it's already an acceptable classic. You are not going to get a 1991 convertible in white with blue leather seats with 20,000 miles for $5,000. Those are already up to $40,000. And those are not just selling at Barrett-Jackson, those are selling at Gooding & Co., which is a kind of a better auction in my eyes. Anyway, there are plenty on offer for $5,000 and under. Highly suggest one that does not have that ridiculous CRT display, because that will cause you trouble. Get like the 90 or 91 that has the regular knobs and rotary controllers. They did have a factory option sunroof on offer. Highly suggest that one. It'll make it more saleable in the future. But, most important about this vehicle, it's cool looking and it was hand built. They had this document that came with it. All the people that built it in Lansing, Michigan signed the document for $5,000. Now do you see why I like the Buick Reatta? Now there is a topic I didn't spend a lot of time talking about in this discussion, but I did give you an example of it, and that is Mike and his Z31. That car now has 240,000 miles on it. He is the third owner. But because of Mike being very proactive with the maintenance, he's had trouble-free miles. And that's a 200-plus horsepower, 32-year-old sports car. It's pretty impressive. Now, this is super important for any car, but more important for a car at a $5,000 price point or below, because more is prone to go wrong, even on the practical, pragmatic side of the list. And then last but not least, and this I can't emphasize enough, and it has nothing to do with the car, more to do with your why, and that is putting money aside every month while you have the hoopty. And the logic is you put the money aside and it builds a fund for your next car down the road. Yes, this is a Dave Ramsey principle, but to be very honest with you, this is the thing that I did that got me from a $3,500 Fiero when I was in university all the way up to a $55,000 Lotus Elise when I was finally working in tech, and I did that all in cash by putting money aside every month. So I sold the Fiero for $4,500, and then I took the money out of the bank that I had been saving, got a $6,000 RX-7, did the same thing for a $10,000 Supra, and so on and so on. Hugely important that you do this. Okay, now I've come up with a couple of specific examples in 3 different lists, and these are only my choices, and I mainly chose these because I know them or because I have some experience or someone I know has experience with them. But what are your choices? Let's turn this into an open discussion, because I'd love to hear either choices that you have experienced personally or maybe your friends have experienced personally. And here's what we're going to do. I never usually allow comments with links in it, but if you have a specific example from Craigslist, and I don't care what part of the world you're in, because I love seeing this stuff. Let's just say I spend far too much time on Craigslist looking for Triumph Stags and TR8s and stupid British things. But put in links of some great examples, $5,000 or below. Now, if you're in the UK or Euros, translate to 5,000 US. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV on Word, MotoManTV on Word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with 2 things. Number 1, please unsubscribe from us, and then resubscribe and click notifications. This is how much YouTube has bastardized the platform. I would argue They have ruined the platform more than the reliability of a $500 Maserati. And then number two, I want to leave you with a fun fact. And perhaps this is I love Oregon, people, you know this. But this is like almost an advertisement for Oregon. So Oregon State Parks. I found out something very interesting about them. I am, thanks to, I think it's Earl? Yeah, Earl, one of our viewers here in Oregon, turned me on to Route 47 here, and specifically a state park just off of 47 outside of Verona, Oregon. So I went up there just to check out the park, and I started talking to one of the rangers, and I found out that there are over 100 Oregon state parks, and they're not funded by the tax rolls. Like, they don't get anything from the taxpayer. They make their money from the lottery and the daily use fees. And he said something very funny. By the way, this guy was super passionate about park system. This guy, Gregory, this guy needs a raise. Anyway, he told me that in good times, there's a lot of people. But when the economy is really bad, that's when business is booming for them, because more people play the lottery and more people stay home for vacation rather than going to places like Australia, and they go camping. So until I see you next time, bis später.